I hadn't seen him in 6 years, not really, not as someone I knew. And when I finally did, standing there on the porch of our old house holding a box too big for him, he didn't say a word, not even hello. I don't know what hit harder, the silence or the fact that I didn't expect anything else. And the worst part, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do next. Portland felt smaller than I remembered. Not just in size, but in the way everything seemed closer now. The streets tighter, the houses older. Like time didn't just pass here, it settled. Heavy, damp. It was raining, obviously. Portland doesn't really know how to do anything else in October. The kind of rain that doesn't soak you all at once, but slowly seeps in until you realize your jacket isn't nearly as waterproof as you thought. I parked across the street just like I used to when I still lived here, like muscle memory. The house looked the same, but different. Peeling paint, the lawn a little overgrown, the porch light flickering like it couldn't decide if it wanted to work today. I stood there for a second, keys in hand, wondering if I should knock or just walk in. Technically, it was still home, but I hadn't called it that in a long time. Then he opened the door. Nate looked older. Not by much, but enough to make me pause. Taller, thinner maybe, but it was the eyes that stopped me. Same eyes, just quieter? Is that even possible? He didn't wave, didn't smile, just stepped back and let me in like I was some delivery guy he didn't want to deal with. I stepped past him, wiping my shoes on the mat like it mattered, and for a second I thought about hugging him. Just for a second. But he was already halfway down the hall, the box in his hands blocking his face. The house smelled like it always did. Old wood, coffee, something burnt into the kitchen walls from years of my mom's experiments. But it was colder now, emptier, even though everything was still here. Coats on hooks, shoes by the door, the old clock ticking too loud. I dropped my bag by the stairs and followed the sound of footsteps into the living room. Nothing had changed. Same couch, same TV, same scratch on the coffee table from when we tried to build a fort and Dad told us, don't use the good chairs, like we had a choice. Nate was sitting on the floor now, unpacking the box. Books, mostly. I sat on the couch, not sure what to say. You okay? I asked, knowing it was a dumb question. He nodded, kept unpacking. Need help? Another nod. So I got up, sat next to him, and started pulling out books. Titles I remembered, some I didn't. One had his name written inside the cover, big messy letters from when he was maybe 7. I smiled, held it up, but he didn't look. We didn't talk much that first night. Actually, we didn't talk at all. I made dinner, nothing fancy. Just pasta and sauce from a jar because that's what I knew he'd eat. He ate in silence, head down, and when I tried to ask about school or his friends or anything, he just shrugged. Eventually, I gave up and we watched TV. Well, I watched. He sat there, eyes on the screen, but somewhere else entirely. I slept in my old room, or what used to be mine. The bed was still there, but the posters were gone and the shelves were empty. I guess Mom cleaned it out after I left. The sheets smelled like they'd been washed months ago and just left waiting. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain tapping against the window. Somewhere down the hall, Nate's door creaked open, then closed again. I didn't get up. The next morning was more of the same. Rain. Silence. Coffee that tasted a little off, but was better than nothing. Nate sat at the table eating cereal, and I sat across from him, wondering how long we could keep this up. I checked my phone. No new messages. Not that I expected any. You need anything from the store? I asked. He shook his head. I thought about calling Sam. He was still around, right? Last I heard he worked at the same place, doing the same thing. But what was I supposed to say? Hey, haven't seen you in years. Want to catch up over the awkward silence of my brother? Yeah, no. Instead, I went for a walk. Just down the street, past the houses that hadn't changed, past the corner store where we used to buy soda and candy when we weren't supposed to. The rain let up a little, just enough to make everything look glossy, like the whole neighborhood was wrapped in plastic. I didn't stay out long. When I got back, Nate was in the living room, sitting on the floor again, surrounded by more boxes. One of them was labeled Dad's Stuff. I sat down, pulled it closer. Inside were notebooks, some tools. an old radio that didn't work anymore. Nate watched me, didn't stop me. I picked up a notebook, flipped through pages of sketches and measurements. Dad always liked to fix things, even when they weren't really broken. There was something else at the bottom. A key. Small, brass, with a little tag that just said, closet. I looked at Nate, held it up. This mean anything to you? He stared at it for a second, then shook his head, but his hands tightened around the book he was holding. I didn't push it. Morning didn't feel any different. Same light trying to push through the gray sky, same ticking clock, same quiet that wasn't really peaceful, just empty. Nate was already up when I came into the kitchen. He didn't look at me, just slid a folded piece of paper across the table like a dealer in a poker game no one wanted to play. Groceries, he'd written at the top. Neat letters, too neat for someone his age. Eggs, bread, milk, coffee, the basics. At the bottom, almost like an afterthought. Thanks, that was all. He left before I could say anything. Just grabbed his jacket, pulled the hood over his head, and was gone. I stood there for a minute, holding the list, wondering how we ended up here. Like, at what point did we stop being brothers and start being strangers who shared a kitchen? It wasn't always like this, right? Or maybe I just wanted to believe that. I walked through the house, hoping maybe something would click, some memory would pop up and explain everything. The walls were covered with the same photos. Me and Nate at the zoo, at the beach, one with Dad holding Nate on his shoulders, both of them squinting in the sun. Mom was never in the pictures, not really. She was always behind the camera, or pretending to be. It hit me then, looking at all those moments frozen in time, that she never really wanted to be part of the picture. I ended up in their bedroom, which felt wrong, but I did it anyway. The bed was made, too perfectly, like no one had slept there in weeks. On the dresser, a stack of old mail, receipts, some handwritten notes in my mom's tight script. One caught my eye. A list not long, but weird. Remind Nate, doctor, Monday. Refill prescription, lock basement. That last one stopped me for a second. We didn't even use the basement. I folded the note, shoved it in my pocket, and left. There was only so much of that room I could take. Fred Meyer was just as depressing as I remembered. Too bright, too cold, and always that weird smell of overripe fruit mixed with cleaning supplies. I was halfway through the list when I saw her. Mrs. Holmes. Nate's old teacher. She looked the same, just smaller somehow, or maybe that was just me seeing her through different eyes now. Ian, she said, like she wasn't sure it was me. I nodded, forced a smile. Back in town, I offered, like it explained anything. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I didn't expect... I heard about your parents. I'm so sorry. Thanks. We stood there in the cereal aisle, both pretending this wasn't weird. Then she said it. Nate's okay? I haven't seen him at school in a while. I froze. He's not in school? She shook her head. Not really. He stopped showing up regularly about 2 years ago. I tried to call, but your mother... She trailed off. Right. There wasn't much else to say after that. By the time I got home, Nate was back. His door was closed, but I could hear music coming through. Soft, scratchy, like vinyl. I knocked, but there was no answer. I left the groceries on the kitchen counter and followed the sound. The door wasn't locked, just barely shut, so I pushed it open. He was sitting on the floor surrounded by records, holding one like it was something fragile. Dad's? I asked. He nodded. I went back to the kitchen, pulled out Dad's old turntable, dusted it off, and brought it to the living room. Found an old Simon and Garfunkel record, because why not, and set it up. The needle dropped and the room filled with that familiar hum, that soft intro to a song I hadn't heard in years. Nate came out eventually. Sat on the edge of the couch, listening. His eyes different now. Not bright, but not empty either. Just there. We didn't talk. Didn't need to. Dinner was quiet again. I made grilled cheese because it was easy and because Dad used to make it on nights when Mom was too tired or too angry to cook. Nate ate slowly, staring at his plate. You got plans? I asked, trying to sound casual. Work? School? Anything? He put down his fork, reached into his pocket and pulled out another note. I don't want to talk. That's all it said. I nodded. Okay. Later that night, when everything should have been still, I heard it. Pages. Not turning fast, not rustling, but slowly, like someone reading something they weren't sure they wanted to know. I stood outside his door, hand raised, ready to knock. But I didn't. What was I afraid of? That he'd answer? Or that he wouldn't? I went back to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. There's something about old houses. They keep secrets like dust, settling into corners you forget to clean. That morning, with Nate gone again and the house creaking like it was thinking for itself, I couldn't stop looking at that door under the stairs. You know the one, right? The kind of door every kid thinks hides monsters or treasure, or maybe both. When we were younger, it just held broken toys, old winter coats, maybe a spider or two. But now it felt different. Heavy. I knew there had to be a key somewhere. We weren't the kind of family to throw things out, more like stuff it in a drawer and forget about it. So I started looking. First stop, the kitchen. Junk drawer central. I pulled it open, already bracing for the chaos, and yeah, there it was. A graveyard of batteries, expired coupons, keys to locks that didn't exist anymore. I dug through it, found a small silver key, but no, too small. Probably for an old diary or something dumb like that. The next hour, I went through every room. Drawers, boxes, behind books, under cushions. Don't judge, people hide stuff in weird places. At one point, I found a box of letters, Mom and Dad's. I shouldn't have read them, but of course I did. What can I say? Curiosity's a bitch. They weren't love letters, not even close. Just short notes, mostly about bills, Nate's appointments, stuff like, don't forget to pick up milk. Cold, like they were roommates, not married. One line stuck with me. Make sure Nate stays home Tuesday. I don't want to deal with the school again. What was that about? By the time Nate came back, I was making coffee. I tried to bring it up, anything about Mom and Dad. Maybe he'd open up a little, let me in. But as soon as I said their names, he stood up, left his cup untouched, and walked away. Again. I wasn't giving up, though. Not yet. Later, I remembered Dad's old toolbox in the garage. He used to fix everything himself, or at least try to. I opened the creaky door, and there it was, right where it always was on the second shelf. Rusty as hell, heavier than I remembered. Inside the usual, wrenches, nails, tape. And at the bottom, a small ring of keys. 3 of them. One looked like it might fit. Back in the house, I stood in front of the closet door, key in hand. I felt stupid, honestly, like I was about to find a pile of old Christmas decorations and nothing else. But when I turned the key, there was this smell. Paper for sure, but also something else. Dampness, like air that hadn't moved in years. I pulled the door open and it hit me. Boxes, not just junk. Organized, labeled. One right at the front in black marker. Nate, do not touch. I knelt down, opened it slowly, like maybe I'd regret it. Inside, notebooks, a couple old toys, a small flashlight that didn't work anymore. I picked up one of the notebooks, hands kind of shaking, though I don't know why. The first page was plain, the second had writing. They think I don't hear them. That's all it said. I closed it. Just like that. I wasn't supposed to see this, not yet. But something made me take it with me. I didn't read more, I swear. Just carried it upstairs, put it in my room, left it on the dresser like it might vanish if I looked away long enough. Dinner that night was tense. I couldn't focus. Couldn't decide if I should tell Nate or just wait, so I tried. That closet under the stairs, I started, like I was talking about the weather. I found some of your stuff. He looked up just for a second. Then he stood. And for the first time since I'd been back, he spoke. Don't go in there. His voice was rough, barely there, but it hit me harder than any shout. Okay, I said. But we both knew it wasn't. It's been almost a week since I opened that closet. And Nate? He's been more silent than ever, if that's even possible. He barely comes out of his room now. Sometimes I hear him moving around in there, shuffling papers maybe, pacing. But when I knock, it's always the same. Nothing. The only words between us now come on scraps of paper. Need bread? I'm fine. Nothing more. I've left the notebooks alone. I swear, I've tried. They've just been sitting there on top of Mom's old dresser in their room, like a pile of things that don't belong to me. But they're in my head constantly, every second. It's like knowing something's burning, but forcing yourself not to look at the smoke. Update. Okay, I wasn't going to write this part, not right away, but I guess I need to. It's a few days later now. Things happened, and yeah, I can't just leave it like before. So here it is. I didn't want to read the notebooks. Not really, but last night, I broke. It wasn't even dramatic. I just couldn't sleep. Again. The house felt smaller, heavier, and I swear the walls were closer than they'd ever been. So I got up, walked down the hall, and picked up the first notebook. Just one. Just to see. The first pages didn't make sense. Bits and pieces like Nate was writing in code only he understood. They think I don't hear. Monday again. Hide it before they come. And then this one line, messy, like he wrote it fast. Why won't Ian come back? I sat there for a while, just holding the book, trying to breathe. My hands felt cold, but the rest of me, burning. A few more pages in, I saw a name. Sam. Now, here's the thing. Sam's always been this background character in our lives. Dad's old friend, the guy who showed up with tools when something broke, who'd stay for dinner sometimes, then disappear for weeks. He was harmless, or at least I thought so, but Nate wrote about him. Sam said it won't take long. Mom said not to tell Ian about Sam. What the hell was that supposed to mean? I didn't think. I just grabbed my keys and left. It was almost midnight, but there was only one place to find Sam at that hour. Bridge City Tap Room. He's one of those people who thinks bars are the only place to have real conversations. Like being drunk somehow makes you more honest. I walked in, and yeah, he was there. Same seat as always, nursing a beer like it was something important. Ian, he said, like we were old buddies catching up. Cut the crap, I snapped before I even sat down. We need to talk. He raised his hands all fake casual. Okay, what's this about? You tell me. What were you doing here when I left? Why did my brother write your name? That wiped the smile off his face. He looked around like suddenly remembering we weren't alone. I don't know what you mean. Don't, I said, leaning in. Don't lie. Not now. He sighed. It's not what you think. It never is. He took a long drink, wiped his mouth, and finally said it. Your parents were struggling with Nate. They didn't know what to do. With what? He wasn't normal. I felt my stomach turn. What? They wanted to send him to a place, Ian, a school, a home, whatever you want to call it. Somewhere for kids who need help. I stared at him. You mean an institution? He nodded, quiet. They couldn't handle him, and with you gone, they thought it was best. I left before he could say more. I didn't want to hear it. The rain hit harder on the drive home, or maybe I just noticed it more. Back in the house, I stood in the hallway staring at Nate's door. I didn't knock. I couldn't. I just sat on the floor outside, notebook still in my hands. Why didn't they tell me? Why didn't Nate? Or maybe, why didn't I ask? Later, I read more. Ian would stop it. Ian would never let them. Dated one day before I left for college. And that was it. The moment I knew, I didn't just leave, I abandoned him. So yeah, I'm not proud, but I'm done hiding from it. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to him. For real this time. No more notes, no more waiting. Just the truth. I don't know why I thought pancakes would fix anything, or why I spent 20 minutes trying to find the exact same brand of orange juice Mom used to buy. The one with too much pulp that no one really liked, but it always ended up in our fridge anyway. Maybe I thought if I could just recreate one good morning, we could pretend for a second that we weren't standing in the middle of a house built on silence. So, yeah, I made breakfast. Pancakes slightly burned on one side because some habits don't die. Orange juice and that raspberry jam Nate used to eat straight from the jar when mom wasn't looking. I set the table like it mattered, even wiped down the counters, which is hilarious considering the rest of the kitchen still looked like no one cared. And then I did something I wasn't sure about. I left the notebook on the table. Right there between the plates. Not open, just there. A quiet invitation, or maybe a dare. I sat down and I waited. Nate didn't come right away. I heard him moving around or heard the floor creak like it was thinking about giving way, and for a second, I almost got up and took the notebook back. But then he walked in, barefoot, hoodie up even though it wasn't cold, eyes flicking to the table like he already knew what I'd done. He stopped, looked at the food, then at the notebook, then at me, and then he sat down. We didn't eat right away, didn't speak. The pancakes got cold, the juice got warm, and time, it just stretched. Long enough for me to think maybe this was a mistake. But then, finally, he said it. You really didn't know. Just like that. No anger, no accusation, just a question that felt like it weighed more than the whole damn house. No, I said. I didn't. That was it. That was all he needed. He didn't stop talking because he couldn't. He stopped because it didn't matter. No one listened. I used to yell sometimes, he said, looking down, but then they'd just say I was crazy, so I stopped. I didn't know what to say. There's nothing you can say to that. That night, after he went back to his room, I sat at the kitchen table and called a lawyer. I didn't have a plan, not really, but I needed to know, could I do something? Could I change any of this? The voice on the other end was calm, too calm, as if they heard this kind of thing every day. Send me what you have, they said. Let's see. The next day, I went digging. In Dad's old office, behind a pile of boxes no one had touched in years, I found it. A file with bank records, copies of documents I didn't understand. But one thing stood out. Transfers. Money moved from one account to another and then gone. No trail. And Nate's name? Not once. That night I told him. I'm staying, I said. I'm not leaving again. He didn't smile. Just nodded, like maybe part of him still didn't believe it. We started clearing out the house. Slowly, one box at a time. Some we opened, some we didn't. Some things were too heavy, even if they didn't weigh much. Then we found it. A stuffed bear, old, missing one eye. Nate held it like he wasn't sure if he remembered it. I took it, just messing around, and felt something inside. We cut it open. A flash drive. What the hell were they hiding now? The flash drive wasn't hidden well at all, just wrapped in worn cotton and shoved inside the old bear like someone gave up on finding a better place. We didn't know what we were going to find on it, not yet, but there was this weight to it, this feeling that it wasn't just some forgotten files or pictures. It felt personal, like something they never wanted us to see, and now that it was in our hands, there was no way we could leave it alone. That night, we plugged it into my laptop, sitting side by side on the living room floor, which didn't really feel like a room anymore, just space filled with half-packed boxes and the kind of air that makes you wonder if you're breathing right. The drive opened slowly, like it knew we weren't ready, and what we saw first were just dates. A list of audio files, nothing more. I looked at Nate, my hand hovering over the trackpad, and asked if he was sure, even though I already knew the answer, even though we'd both gone too far to stop now. He didn't say anything, just gave this small nod, the kind that wasn't for me, but more like giving himself permission. So I clicked. The first recording wasn't clean. It was filled with static, that weird echo of something recorded in secret, like even the device was trying to keep its distance. And then we heard him. Dad. His voice wasn't loud, wasn't strong. It was small, like he was whispering just in case someone might hear. I don't know what else to do, he said, and I swear my whole chest locked up. She doesn't listen anymore. I'm scared. Nate's different, but he's not broken. He's not. I couldn't move, couldn't even shift in place. Nate didn't flinch either, just stared at the screen like looking would help him make sense of words that should have come years ago. We played the next file. His voice again, maybe days later, maybe weeks. Who knows? Time didn't really matter anymore. She wants to send him away. Says it's for the best, but I know it's about her, not him. She can't handle him, never could. But he's just a kid. File after file, we listened. Dad wasn't talking to anyone. Not us, not mom, not some lawyer or friend. Just into the void, or maybe hoping the act of saying it out loud would somehow fix things. He spoke about fear, about how he couldn't win arguments anymore, how he thought he was failing Nate and me, how love wasn't enough to hold anything together when everything kept falling apart. It was messy, it was raw, and it was real in a way that didn't make things better, but at least it made them true. We sat in silence after the last file, but it wasn't the same silence that used to fill the house. This one didn't press on you, didn't demand anything. It just sat with us like it was waiting. Nate finally spoke, and his voice didn't shake. I don't want to only remember the bad stuff. We sold the house 2 months later. No big scenes, no long goodbyes, just a series of paperwork and a moving truck that felt too small for the weight of what we didn't want to take with us. We kept some things and a box of photos, a few of Dad's books, the old bear with its uneven stitches, not to live in the past, but not to erase it either. Nate went back to school, just a regular one, nothing special, but it was his choice, and that made it enough. I found a job at the local library, something quiet, something steady, and for once I didn't feel like I was running from anything. Thanks for coming back. I looked at him, smiled, and said what I meant to say all along. I was always here. I just didn't know where to look. We moved into a small house on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy, but it had a yard, a tiny garden that we never really figured out how to take care of, and windows that caught the morning light like they were made for us. Sam stopped by before we left Portland. No big talk. Just this quiet visit where he gave me an old photo. Me, Nate, and Dad, on some fishing trip I barely remembered. But in the picture, we were laughing, all three of us, like nothing had ever gone wrong. And for once, that felt okay. The story didn't end in silence, and I guess that's the part I want you to remember. It ended with a voice. Nate's voice reading out loud in our new living room, a book in his hands. No hesitation, no fear, just words that filled the space we built together. And me? I listened. Because sometimes the most important thing you can do isn't to fix everything. It's just to be there, really be there, while someone you love figures out how to speak again.